Welcome to the Scam Economy with your host, Matt Bender.
If you were to tell me on last week's show that I would open up this episode by saying the word Razzlekhan, I probably would have asked you, what in the world is a Razzlekhan? But now we do know what a Razzlekhan is, and that is, of course, the stage name for the TikTok surrealist rapper who wants to be a tech startup CEO boss babe who appears to be one of the two masterminds, if you could even call them, behind the huge 2016 hacking of the crypto exchange Bitfinex. This is going to be quite an episode. Now, before we get any further, though, I'm going to do a little bit of my own Bitfinexing and drop some promos for how you can support this show, Scam Economy. Folks, go to youtube.com/MattBinder if you already aren't watching it live there, and subscribe to the channel. You can also subscribe to my video channels at twitch.tv/MattBinder. Go to scameconomy.com for all the links where you can watch or listen to this program, including links to Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, which some people said they had issues with before. Not anymore. That's fixed. Also, link to Spotify. If you can, by the way, also drop reviews on Apple Podcasts and Spotify if you like this show. What else? So, also, patreon.com/MattBinder to support this show monetarily. I ask for $5 a month if you can. You can give less. You can give more. It's up to you. It helps grow this show. Oh, also let me note that recently I've been on a few shows talking about the scam economy. Last week, I went on a YouTube show called Left Reckoning, hosted by a producer of The Majority Report with Sam Cedar, a progressive daily talk show, to talk about crypto and what this show is all about. And then I went on actress Busy Phillips' show called Busy Phillips is Doing Her Best to tell her more about the celebrities that are hawking NFTs and all the weirdness going on in the crypto space, because she was genuinely interested, especially after seeing what was going on with Paris Hilton and Jimmy Fallon in that segment on The Tonight Show. It seemed to have triggered her, is this possibly a scam or a grift or something not on the up and up alarm? So definitely go check that out too. And now let's get into this crazy story. And joining me now to talk about all of this is senior tech reporter with Mashable, Jack Morse. Jack, thanks so much for joining me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Thanks, Matt, for having me.
Now, I should be full disclosure. Jack is my colleague, just in case anyone's wondering. And we all know that the crypto
That's
people,
right. We do have the pleasure of working together.
Right. And the crypto people are very, they view transparency as very important. So I'm being transparent here.
Appreciate it.
So, Jack, what there was this big, let's just set it this way, I guess. There was this big news that dropped in, quite frankly, not just the crypto world, really just the financial space, the criminal space, the Justice Department space, really an overlap of like politics and finance and tech. The DOJ came out and announced these big charges and this arrest announcement. What happened?
Right. So the DOJ says that they made an arrest and someone was attempting to launder billions of dollars worth of cryptocurrency and that they had identified the people doing so. This was notable for a couple of reasons. One, they said that they had tied the cryptocurrency in question back to a major 2016 hack, which so far had been unresolved. Two, they said they were able to identify the people despite the fact that they had apparently tried to use many sort of anonymizing features, which we can get into later. And three, what really caught my eye is that, it lists the people being accused in the DOJ press release and in the documents that they're in their early 30s and they're in New York and they're a married couple. So immediately people are interested, the finance world is interested. We're talking about billions of dollars. We're talking about two young New Yorkers. It's a pretty wild story.
Right. And when people looked more into them, they found, it's not like these were just two young people who were, I guess they're sort of mysterious in some ways, but they have a long history like a social media trail on YouTube, TikTok, even in like the tech space. In some
Yeah.
aspects, both of them really aspired to sort of be tech startup like millionaires. Like they sort of wanted to be a mix between, I don't know, like a Mark Zuckerberg or Jack Dorsey, but also kind of like from like the speeches out there. It seems like at least she sort of wanted to be like a Gary V or the 4 Hour Work Week guy or something like that too.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's Ilya Lichtenstein is 34 and his wife Heather Morgan 31. And you're right, they have like many people their age, they have a lot of online presence, but they specifically have a lot of online stuff related to cryptocurrency, cybersecurity, social engineering, and hacking, which are all very relevant, obviously, to our conversation. You can go in a deep dive down, Heather Morgan's Twitter profile and see that she was pictured in, I believe, 2015 with John McAfee, like a notorious deceased cryptocurrency scammer. These people have been in, these two people, Liechtenstein and his wife Morgan, have been involved one way or another, legally or they're accused of illegally, for many years.
Right. Now before we go further into their online personalities and profiles, let's rewind. Let's go all the way back through the sands of time, and let's go back to 2016 when this big hack on this crypto trading platform Bitfinex occurred. Can you break down what we know about that hack?
Yeah, so Bitfinex, which is a cryptocurrency exchange, disclosed the hack on August 2nd, I believe, in 2016. And they said at the time was around $65 to $7 million worth of Bitcoin had been stolen, which now is, of course, worth much more. The total was about 120,000 Bitcoin. And what seemed to have happened was that someone was able to artificially or behind the scenes change customer withdrawal amounts, like the limits or caps set, and then was able to sort of bypass the multi-sig wallet and basically steal these funds, send them off out of Bitfinex's control to a wallet that the hacker controlled. So, theoretically, there should have been a lot of stops that would have prevented this from happening in the first place. Obviously, that's what hackers do. They get around those things.
Now, has Bitfinex ever come out and given details about exactly how this occurred?
I was looking back into that because this was, again, 2016. There have been a lot of hacks since then. I had forgotten some of the specifics. I believe that they had issued some statements, but mainly I think they were, and as they confirmed earlier this week, they had been working closely with U.S. law enforcement behind the scenes to try to figure out who had done it. So I think a lot of the details they had kind of kept to themselves.
Right. And when we talk about the hack here, what were this what amount of money are we talking about? And in the, you mentioned all these various crypto hacks that literally each one is its own, probably multi-episode series, really. But where does the Bitfinex hack land in like the hierarchy of crypto hacks?
Yeah, it's definitely up there. So I think, if you're talking about hacks of all times, a lot of people talk about the Mt. Gox hack was another big exchange that happened. But the 2016 Bitfinex hack was a pretty big deal. This was, now 6 years ago, but that's a long time ago in the world of cryptocurrency. And it was a pretty monumental hack at the time. And I think still, and specifically because, up until very recently, a lot of those funds had just sat in the same place. Those stolen funds hadn't been moved. And because of the public nature of the blockchain, specifically the Bitcoin blockchain, you can see that those funds really had just been sitting there. I think that really intrigued a lot of people and got a lot of attention and was like, what happened? Someone stole this money and then didn't do anything with it.
Right. So Heather Morgan and Ilya Lichtenstein appear to have not used these funds. And then at one point, it appears that, and we should say, we're talking about, well, what they have actually, according to the DOJ, is that they had laundered $3.6 billion here. And that's not even the full amount that, Bitfinex says was stolen. I think that amount was even well over $4 billion. So either the DOJ hasn't been able to connect a wallet or a few wallets with the rest of the money back to these two, or maybe there's other people involved, which we could get to in a second. But when do they start moving around funds? Because it does happen at some point, and what do they do with it?
So large amount of the stolen funds actually were on the move as of earlier this month. And, the DOJ seized a large amount of this, but not all of it. And they claim that, and again, these are all accusations at this point, but they claim that Liechtenstein, had a lot of these private cryptographic keys stored in an encrypted cloud server, which they say they were able to seize. And then once they had those keys, they were able to seize that money. Now, you mentioned just a moment ago that they don't have all of the stolen funds. Well, it's possible that whoever, had this cloud storage, again, it's accused to be Liechtenstein. The accusation is that he didn't keep all his keys in that one spot. So that's why maybe they weren't able to seize all the funds. But yeah, the funds were on the move recently, suggesting that someone finally decided that it was time to make this happen.
Right. I mean, that. First of all, I want to just focus on the fact that he stored these keys on a cloud service. I mean, that's just astounding.
Right. It is astounding, but I also think it speaks to sort of the complicated nature of the whole thing. So, excuse me, but if you were tasked, or if you were in a situation where you had control of $4.6 billion worth of cryptocurrency and you were trying to launder it, which in this case, allegedly went through thousands of intermediary wallets and tumblers and coin joins and chain hops and all this stuff and tried to launder it through the Alpha Bay, dark market. It's like you're essentially talking about potentially thousands of cryptocurrency wallets and private keys. Over the course of years, potentially you're trying to plan this or set this up. How else do you keep track of all this stuff, right? You keep it in a spreadsheet. And if we're talking about $4.6 billion worth of Bitcoin, you want to protect that spreadsheet. The best way to do it is in the cloud, an encrypted cloud service. Of course, though, that also means that it can get seized and you can go to jail.
Right. I mean, I guess if I was to launder $3.6 billion in crypto across a number of wallets, I guess to make sure there's no trail coming back to me, I would very in a manner where they can't quite tell, write the passcodes around like on paper, like maybe write sentences and just like the words I need to remember, just highlight or something in some way so that it's not obvious. It would be they need to work real hard to prove beyond a reasonable doubt but like to just
uploading stuff to the cloud in general is a bad idea if you're trying to make sure you're the only one that has access to it. I mean, even encrypted cloud services like iCloud. So if you have an iPhone and you back up your messages to the cloud, it's encrypted, but Apple has the encryption key. So if law enforcement comes to Apple with a legal subpoena or warrant, they can actually get access to the contents of your encrypted files. Because Apple can access it. So encryption isn't necessarily a surefire protected thing unless you have it end-to-end encrypted. But yeah, so that's what they did, allegedly.
Right. Now, I just came across this. According to this piece in Time, written by Andrew Chow, it seems like the money, the Bitcoin, was being passed around as early as early 2017 in small amounts through a dark web currency exchange called Alpha Bay, which was shut down by law enforcement that year.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and then they basically were just...
So Alpha Bay, that's something that, I've actually wrote about that a bunch. That was a big darknet market, kind of in the vein of Silk Road. So think about where people would go online and they'd send Bitcoin to buy drugs or whatever, fake documents. Alpha Bay was like a follower to that. Like it came in a long line of darknet markets. And Alpha Bay offered a service, or they claimed anyway, that if you submitted or passed your cryptocurrency through their accounts, that it essentially tumbled it or mixed it. So they basically were claiming to be an anonymization service as well, which they may have. I can't speak to the efficacy of that. However, law enforcement seized their servers, as you mentioned, I believe in 2017, and the alleged founder actually committed suicide in jail. He was a relatively young guy. But with all those servers, law enforcement might have been able to, sort of undo whatever mixing had been done in 2017.
Right. Also, let's talk about this real quick, because I saw this and it sounds like it makes sense, and I mentioned it earlier on another show I was on. But it appears that if they just weren't so, I don't know if it's, and we could get into how smart or how well thought out this was even more in a bit. But it appears that if they had just distributed this money throughout, just randomly sending chunks of it to thousands and maybe even tens of thousands of different wallets, and just kept a percentage or portion for themselves, which again we're talking 3.6 billion. Even a very small percent would be a lot of money, life changing. They could have pretty much, it seems, sort of gone under the wire, or they really concealed themselves in a much better way. Let's put it that way, because then the trace would be to tens of thousands of different wallets instead of just, hey, we're seeing the same few wallets trading back and forth.
Well, I would say that premise sort of makes sense on the face of it, but I don't actually know if that's right. So there's a company called Chainalysis, which works with the US government, works with law enforcement. And basically they're a blockchain analytics company. And they are incredibly good at tracking money launderers and criminals on the blockchain. That is basically their primary product that they sell. And they can follow cryptocurrency transactions between and over thousands of accounts that are split up and jumbled and moved around and that are automated. So people can write scripts where they basically are taking a single pot of Bitcoin and then they're splitting it into thousands of different accounts at the same time and moving it around. And then eventually it finds its way back to a centralized spot. This is something that a company like Chainalysis can follow and track, And they've even claimed, or hinted at, I should say, the ability to de-anonymize certain privacy coins like Monero, though I haven't seen explicit proof of that.
Right. So okay, that's interesting, because the Bitcoin, the sending to many wallets seemed like it made sense in some ways. I mean, so where do you think the actual the failure point has got to be storing the wallet keys to the cloud, because that seems to be the one connection, right? I mean, that seems to be the thing that makes it all fall apart.
Big part of it, but I would also. Yeah, I would also say, however, I think largely the failure point for this use case is public blockchains at all. I think that, when Bitcoin first came onto the scene, a decade ago, at least under the public consciousness, a lot of people and reporters were covering it like it was some kind of anonymity cloak, when in reality it's the exact opposite, right? It's every single transaction anyone makes is public at any time forever. And as people get better at sort of tracing this stuff, you can go back in time and de-anonymize people. There have been arrests where people were selling drugs, like people in Southern California were tied to the original Silk Road, the OG one, not Silk Road 2.0, not Alpha Bay, were arrested 8, 9, 10 years later because they tried to move funds that they hadn't touched, right? So I think the failure point, yes, keeping private keys in a encrypted cloud storage that you control, yeah, that's a pretty big one. But it also could be a larger issue with just the very nature of a public blockchain itself.
Also, do you think the amount they stole played a role? Like, they probably could have got away with maybe $1 million or something like that, perhaps. I mean, you've seen, especially now, a lot of companies, you steal a huge sum, they'll be like, all right, give us back most of it, and you could keep like 20 mil as a bug bounty.
I think you're 100% correct. I think that 2016 was a different time than today, but in the last couple of months we've seen multiple hacks. I think from November and until now we've seen at least 2 hacks of over several $100 million. Most recently the wormhole hack, where the victim or the company that was hacked or the platform that was hacked said, hey, if you return this money, we're going to give you $10 million, no questions asked. So I think that if who's to say what would happen if something like that happened today? But my guess would be Bitfinex would offer them a quote unquote white hat bug bounty fee, finder's fee after the fact, and would just let them cash out.
Right. Now, we should also say at this point, I think we've mentioned it, but just to be clear again, Morgan and Liechtenstein have not been charged with anything involved with the hacking. And we're going to get into that even more right now. But, we don't know if they're just being charged with money laundering. We don't know if Morgan or Liechtenstein, or maybe both of them, who knows, actually found this weak security point in Bitfinex back in 2016. I don't know what I think. I mean, this would be pure speculation. I think it's possible either way. And
Right.
it sounds like, if you were, if they don't have the skills, it sounds like if you did have the skills to figure this out and find this security flaw and hack into there and steal these billions of dollars in Bitcoin, it seems like a smart thing to do would to try to find some dupes who you can unload most of the money on. And then maybe you can get away, move out to a country where they don't have extradition laws with the U.S., which I cannot believe these two did not do that. It just, oh my God, unbelievable. But and then you all the attention's put on them, and you scot free. You live your life drinking mimosas on the beach of some like beautiful country on the other side of the world.
I will say the sort of Patsy scenario is like has a real appeal to it, especially when you look into sort of their online presence and Heather Morgan, her sort of budding rap career and her online persona. You think you look at this and you think, could this person really have stolen $4.6 billion? And I would just say that maybe not. We don't know. And again, there's just accused of the money laundering, not even convicted. But at the same time, like, why not? I mean, these are people that have a long history in the space, involved. Heather Morgan had written about social engineering, had given talks about cybersecurity. These are people that, if not them, why not? I don't know. It's hard to say for sure, and it's easy to dismiss, but it's still a possibility.
Right, and everyone's talking about her TikTok rapping career as what is it, Razzlekhan. I'm gonna play one of those videos right now.
Never forget, weirdest is most original. This song is for the entrepreneurs and hackers, all the misfits and smart slackers. Razzlekhan, the Versace better win. Come real far, but don't know where I'm heading. Motherfucking crocodile of Wall Street. Silver on my fingers and boots on my feet. Always be a goat, not a goddamn sheep. Email me, fuck your message at the beep. Beep, 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 beep. Spirit of a revolutionary, power of a dictator. Love to be contrary, but I'm fly like a gator. I've got pilot blood, I'm a real risk taker. Pirate riding the flood, badass money maker. Grandmother crocodile, weirder than an X-File. Brief fire, silver, so sexy when I slither. Sparkle on my little finger, hell of a razzle ear to ear. Poised to throw a zinger, playing on their worst fear. Razzlekhan, the Versace better win. Come real far, but don't know where I'm heading. Motherfucking crocodile of Wall Street. Silver on my fingers and boots on my feet.
And here's one of her TikToks.
Motherfuckers, hodo. What I gotta do? Yodo. Our mission is noble. Yeah, I wanna be a mogul. My tindy's going global. Build an empire, Constantinople. You mean Istanbul? Get icy like Froyo. All gotta stay vocal. Bitcoin, Ethereum, hodl. AMC, GameStop, YOLO. The hedges short squeeze with ease, but they say no pump and dumps, please. What?
I mean, this is, I guess the best way to describe it, real cringe stuff. You got the rap videos where she's clearly not in, her raps are clearly not in sync with the beats. Some really corny mentions here of her being the crocodile of Wall Street, whatever the hell that means. Her TikTok raps where there's actually no music behind it. I mean, they did cash in some of that 3.6 billion. You think she would have hired a producer at some point to actually help make this music she was putting out there a little bit better. Like she puts it across like she's like a funny surrealist, like it's supposed to be weird and over the top rapper. Like she's clearly trying to portray that, but like the music's just like not good, not even in a parody way. Like it's just clearly bad.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly not to my taste. And I would say that, were it not for her association, her alleged involvement in this, I think that it just would have been, her music would have likely been, like all other kinds of content on the web, sort of living in its own little niche, weird world where a few people understand what's going on and everyone else is kind of like, what's going on here? But, because of this accusation, all of a sudden it puts a spotlight on this. It's just jaw dropping. Yeah.
Right. And you did mention the stuff she has out there where she talks about cybersecurity and social engineering. She's doing like presentations. And I mean, I don't know how much she knows about this stuff, or if she's just like, in the tech space, it's really easy to talk a lot and try to sound smart and really have no fucking clue what you're talking about. We see it all the time with tech startups, even outside the crypto space. But she clearly has an infatuation with this stuff. She sort of portrays herself as like one of those tech startup CEO boss babes. And she really has like if you sort of ran away with all this money or just took all this money, you think you would just like, not worry about your online presence or even your identity. But she keeps, not even the rap stuff, she's out there trying to continue to portray herself as like some startup software CEO founder. And you can tell that's like really important to her. Like she wants to be someone in the space. Like she wants to, take these interviews with like TechCrunch, I bet, and Recode. Like she would have loved to have done that stuff.
She has a personal brand for sure.
Right. And so I do. And so the social engineering
and it's so incongruous. Yeah.
No, go ahead.
Well, yeah, you'd think it, I think, oh yeah. Well, one of the reasons this is so fascinating is because, if, again, this is the big if, but if she was involved in this and had access to this amount of money, seeing someone participate so aggressively in like quote unquote like the hustle economy or whatever, trying to present herself as a brand and all the stuff that, as a millennial myself, I'm in my mid 30s or late 30s, all the things that I kind of cringe at and don't like about like basically modern society, she actively embraced them. And so many, I think, other the confused reaction, so much of it is like, as you said, man, if you had this much money, why wouldn't you just flee the country and go chill on a beach? Like, what? Why are you pretending to be, or why are you being a Forbes contributor and writing all these kind of garbage clickbait articles? Like, why even bother?
Right. And that's, for people who don't know, this is the Forbes contributor platform is like, how back in the day, Huffington Post had like their actual staff paid reporters, and then they would just let basically anyone who signed up to be a blogger just blog for free. And people would do that.
Right.
Well, people do that for one of two reasons. Like you just said, the whole branding thing, they could just say they're a Huffington Post writer. No one will really look into if they're actually a paid writer or just part of this weird system where you can just sign up and write. And then B, getting your content on there gives it some sort of cachet that, again, those same people who don't look into it don't realize, like, hey, this isn't like an official reported piece. This is like basically someone writing on a live journal or blogger, except it's on Huffington Post. Well, Forbes has that same thing, and they still have it. Huffington Post got rid of that years ago after realizing it was being used in bad faith. But, Forbes has plenty of examples of people, usually what you see now is people will write in Forbes as a contributor unpaid, but they'll get paid by a company who wants them to write about their company. But because it's on Forbes, it'll look like, oh, we got actually covered by Forbes, and they'll present it on their website, as seen on Forbes.
Right. It's basically Forbes with their contributor network. And I should say that Forbes has real reporters that do real work. But with the contributing network, they basically streamlined, product placement or sponsored content in like a news dressing or facade.
Right. And the reason I want to focus on the Forbes thing, other than her, tying it in with her need to build a brand, is there's a company called BitGo who worked with Bitfinex. And I don't know if they still do. Do they still provide wallet services for Bitfinex?
I'm actually not sure about that, but yeah, they used to basically work. They were involved with. They had an AP, like a private API with Bitfinex, basically. So Bitfinex and BitGo were tied together on the back end. Right.
And so basically, from what I read, is that Bitfinex's security in 2016, again, it could have changed, would be to have the passcode for the wallet distributed to three different parties: the user, the person whose wallet it is, Bitfinex, and then this third party, like you just mentioned, what they did, BitGo. And so, BitGo wasn't the weak point. We should let this be known. BitGo wasn't the weak point in that Bitfinex hack. But again, they were still involved in the whole infrastructure. And so here's this company, basically tied at the waist with Bitfinex during this hack. And they tweeted out just 2 years ago, in 2020, an article by Heather Morgan about cybersecurity practices. And on top of that, they provided quotes for her to put in this Forbes contributor article. I mean, you couldn't write it. Like when the movie comes out, which I'm sure it'll eventually come out, and I'm sure there'll be some DAO who buys the NFT of it and thinks they own the rights to the movie.
Right.
But when the movie comes out, I mean, they're not going to have to really embellish anything. I mean, it's all right there.
It's pretty wild. It's pretty wild to, have someone who is such an, we talked about this before, or at least positions herself as an insider in the cryptocurrency security space, then be accused of ripping it off. But, I mean, like an insider attack is a real thing. It happens. And so, It is just like the irony of it is pretty sweet that one of the companies, sort of tangentially involved or related to the hack in 2016 would then later be promoting a person accused of laundering the money stolen from that hack. Yeah, it's wild.
Right. It's almost like she did like what they say, like, I'm not accusing her of being this, but what they say serial killers or other high profile criminals do, they go back to the scene of the crime afterwards. Like, it's almost like she had to get involved with these guys somehow. But it's
pretty wild.
Right. Yeah. Right. Like to contact them and say, hey, I'm writing this piece. Let's move on now to her boyfriend, Ilya Lichtenstein, because while we're all paying attention to her rap videos and, another idea is how they found out about this security flaw. Did she actually use the social engineering skills she claims to have found out about that from someone involved with Bitfinex in some way? Again, we don't know anything about that yet, or if she was even involved at that deep of a hacking perspective. But her boyfriend actually does seem to have legit programming or coding credentials.
Yeah. And maybe you can tell me more a bit about that, actually, because before we got on the call, you were telling me that, he used to work. And where were you saying again?
Oh, right. It's unclear to me if Lichtenstein is still involved with this company that he founded or was the CEO of. I saw that some writer reached out to them and they didn't respond. But he had founded, I think it was called like MixRank or something like that, some SEO company or some sort of search optimization company. And they had, in fact, there's a video from, I think 2014, where he is being interviewed by Heather Morgan. And it's unclear to me if they were even boyfriend or girlfriend at the time. They just seem, maybe that's where they connected. Again, she was really dying to get into the tech startup space, it seems like. And here's this guy, Lichtenstein, who has this company. And Mark Cuban had actually funded them. I think it was like $1.5 million. I mean, not terribly big when we're talking in the tech space, but also a lot more than most companies who even struggle to get funding get. And so that's just interesting. Like, here's this guy who actually is getting success in the space. And then he moves on, or in addition to the SEO company, he starts some blockchain company called like EndPass. And I mean, I don't know if he does that after the hack or before the hack.
So on the one hand, you have someone with some demonstrated programming knowledge, and on the other hand, you have someone who bills herself as a social engineer and cybersecurity expert. And you put those two together, why not? I mean, they could have done it. And again, it's all alleged at this point. But I would say that a lot of people in the cryptocurrency and blockchain space are normal people who have normal jobs and are not criminals. But there are a lot of very flamboyant and publicly sort of conspicuous consumption, brash people in the space. Also, the space attracts it. So I can see it being potentially true. That hey, they actually were in this unique spot, Morgan and Lichtenstein, and they did, again, potentially pull off this hack, and then they were also kind of publicly internet goofballs.
Right.
Yeah, I can see that happening. I will say, they were together. I know, like, So I will say that in 2016, I was going back through Morgan's Twitter profile, and she was posting photographs with Liechtenstein from a wedding. I believe it was in Seattle, basically like the same weekend that the hack went down. So, it is funny to think they were together then, and who knows what they were up to that weekend. But it's a relationship that goes back a while. The caption on the Instagram post she posted is quite hilarious, actually. I think it's something like, love getting into trouble with this guy, or let me see if I can pull it up. But
yeah, I'm actually pulling up exactly what you're talking about now too, right? There's
yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, it just says, the caption on her post from August 1st, 2016, which was a day before Bitfinex disclosed the hack, was an Instagram post with she's seated on a couch next to what looks like next to Liechtenstein, I guess. But and she says, "I will always love getting into trouble with this crazy guy," which is like, it's bad timing for her to have that the day before the hack is announced. But it's pretty wild to look back and see that history just sitting out there on Instagram.
Right. This is all gonna. I mean, we're obviously gonna find out more as this case actually goes to trial or they come to some agreement. I don't know. They're facing, I think, what is it, a 20 years minimum? Is that it?
Right. And so there's two separate charges, and I think one of the charges carries a 20-year maximum and the other one carries a 5-year maximum. But, 25 years is a lot of years, and I could see it would not surprise me if there was some sort of plea deal or some sort of agreement, or if we learn a lot more in the coming months. Let me put it that way.
Right. And one really fun thing that we didn't mention is because a lot of people say that a lot of people speculate that NFTs, non-fungible tokens, the monkey JPEGs and the cyberpunks, a lot of people speculate that the reason they sell these tokens to connect it to these JPEGs sell for so much is because they're used for money laundering. Well, we know from the DOJ report, the DOJ announcement, on this, is that that's in fact what at least Morgan was doing. She was using the hacked Bitfinex funds to buy NFTs, which seems like a good way to actually, get that money and maybe in a non-conspicuous way eventually sell those NFTs, and maybe people won't connect it to the laundered money directly. Maybe take a little bit more work to get to that connection.
Yeah, I mean it's a great way. Buying and selling NFTs is a great way to potentially legitimize potentially illegitimate funds. But again, it's a very risky proposition to do that. As I mentioned earlier, that company Chainalysis can really track that stuff. And even as was just, came out in the news this week, and maybe Matt, you're going to talk about it on your show, or maybe you already have. But, Melania Trump's NFT appears to have been bought by the same wallet that listed it. Or essentially, the funds to purchase the NFT came from the same wallet that listed the NFT. So even though a couple hops were taken in between, you're able to look at the blockchain and see, oh wait, the money that came to purchase this thing came from the person who put it up. So yeah, I think there's a lot of potentially wash trading going on and a lot of money laundering going on. But a dedicated eye could uncover it.
Right. And one additional NFT point there is that I went to go check out Heather Morgan's OpenSea account where her NFTs are listed.
Oh, yeah?
And they took her account down. It's not there anymore. Man. Which, guess what? Means that anyone who wants to see these NFTs, they can't. So this tokens, basically, the tokens she purchased, which are the NFTs themselves, basically point to nothing. Like, there's no, it's not connected to anything anymore. So much for decentralization, I guess, right? I mean, when OpenSea didn't something similar happen when Twitter launched their profile picture verification, and they just happened to launch it on a day where OpenSea was having server problems, and so because they were pulling from OpenSea's API, they couldn't actually show the NFTs because they were stored on OpenSea servers.
I'm not specifically sure if that happened to Twitter, but that is something that happened. So, for example, MetaMask, which is like a really popular cryptocurrency wallet, enables you to store, your NFTs in your cryptocurrency wallet. However, OpenSea, basically what it was doing was making an API call to OpenSea, and OpenSea had some problems, which meant that people, if they had purchased their NFTs through OpenSea, couldn't see the images associated with those NFTs. Right. And that just comes back to the point that the NFTs is it describes the thing, the item, the object in question. It is not the thing itself. And yeah, so
right.
it's a hard, confusing thing to get your head around. But yeah, they're a wild topic.
Right. So Jack, to end here, do you think Bitfinex has taught the crypto space? Well, I should say the Bitfinex hack and the subsequent money laundering has taught the crypto space anything?
I think the response will be, this is good for Bitcoin, quote unquote. I think people will say, great, those tokens are locked up, the Bitcoin's locked up, that means my Bitcoin's worth more. I think that people that are really closely paying attention will take it as a lesson in how difficult it is to truly anonymize Bitcoin transactions. I think that's the takeaway that I have. I mean, there will always be hacks. When there's this much money at stake, people will always be trying to steal it. But the question becomes, if you can't ever spend it, if you can't ever get away with it, what is the point?
Right. It's interesting to see that, really, the core ideology of where the crypto whole market came from, and Bitcoin specifically, really dovetailing with the fact that the U.S. government continues to hoard lots of Bitcoin. No government involvement, baby.
Yeah.
Jack Morse, senior tech reporter at Mashable. Where can people find you? And if you want to promote or drop anything upcoming you'd like to share with us, definitely let us know.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Basically, I'm writing at Mashable. That's the home of all my stuff, but I talk a lot of shit on Twitter, and my Twitter account is at jmorse. That's MORSE with an underscore on the end, because that's the way I roll. And I think I tweet a lot about sort of NFT stuff, the cryptocurrency scams. I also try to poke around and figure out what's actually going on and try to explore usability of some of these things. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, give me a follow.
Thanks a lot.
That's kind of it.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Jack. We were shooting the shit in the Slack, our Slack DMs, and just putting all this stuff together. And I was just like, man, this is a conversation that should be happening in public. Look at all this stuff that's being uncovered. So thank you so much for taking the time and joining me. Have a great night, buddy.
Yep. Thanks, you too. Appreciate it, Matt. Take care.
Now, don't go anywhere quite yet, because not long after I spoke with Jack, there was some new revelations in this whole story, interestingly enough, published by Forbes. And I should mention, like Jack said, Forbes has real journalists, and this isn't coming from that contributor program. These are legit reporters who reported this news out. This is Cyrus Farivar and David Jeans, Forbes staff, senior writer. And there's some really interesting information here that when the federal investigators raided the home of Ilya Lichtenstein and Heather Morgan, they found hollowed out books, fake passports, and burner phones literally in a bag labeled burner phones. I mean, this is amazing. And on top of that, there's a few really interesting nuggets. For example, the couple seems to have been traveling to Ukraine and trying to get false identification and figure out ways to launder money via Ukraine and possibly Russia, it seems. But this is a really, really interesting one. So, and this is the one note I really want to focus on here, because this is something else. So when agents arrived at their apartment, we now know that they went to search, and Morgan and Lichtenstein said they did not want to be there while this was going on. So they asked if they could go get their cat. And so they said, okay. And the cat was apparently hiding under the bed. So according to court documents, while Morgan was crouched next to the bed calling for the cat, she positioned herself next to the nightstand, which was still holding one of her phones. She then reached up and grabbed her cell phone from the nightstand and repeatedly hit the lock button. It appeared that Morgan was attempting to lock the phone in a way that would make it more difficult for law enforcement to search the phone's contents. Law enforcement had to wrestle the phone from her hands. I mean, there's going to be more coming out of this. And this isn't the last episode you'll hear on this show about this tale. And frankly, I'm looking forward to finding out what happens, if there was anyone else involved, and really dive further into this latest saga, I guess you can call it, in the scam economy.